For 1,000 years, Constantinople was the jewel of the world. Walls taller than 10-story buildings, moats wider than highways. It survived Goths, Persians, Arabs, Crusaders. Every enemy broke on these stones. But in 1453, the city that was supposed to never fall collapsed in less than 2 months. Why? Not destiny, not divine will. 3 mistakes, so stupid they feel impossible. And the first one was almost laughable. They forgot to lock the gate. While the defenders of Constantinople stood shoulder to shoulder on the towering battlements, their eyes fixed on the massive cannons pounding the walls, no one spared a thought for a small, half-forgotten door. It was called the Kerkoporta, a minor postern gate tucked away in the northern sector of the Theodosian Walls. To most, it was irrelevant. A service entrance, barely worth a guard's attention. But in siege warfare, a fortress is only as strong as its weakest stone. And on that night, Constantinople's weakest stone was wide open. Under the cover of darkness, 50 Ottoman soldiers crept toward that gate. Not an army, not a horde, just 50. Chainmail glinting in the moonlight, curved sabers drawn, breath silent with anticipation. They were not storming a wall, they were slipping through a crack. And that crack was large enough to swallow an empire whole. One by one, they disappeared inside the gate, ghosts against the stone. No alarm was sounded, no defenders noticed. The fate of Constantinople had just stepped through its own back door. When the first Ottoman climbed the stairs of the inner wall and raised the crescent flag, it was not just a symbol, it was psychological warfare. Defenders who had fought for weeks saw it and believed the city was already lost. Fear moved faster than steel. Courage shattered like glass. In minutes, rumors spread from one tower to another. The Turks are inside. The walls are breached. No one knew it was only 50 men. To the defenders, it felt like thousands. Men abandoned their stations. Veterans who had faced countless assaults now dropped their weapons and rushed to the city streets to protect their families. The chain of defense unraveled in minutes. Constantinople's strength had always been its unity, its discipline on the walls. But unity turned to chaos, and chaos opened a breach wider than any cannon could blast, all because of a single, unlocked door. The tragedy was not the 50 men who slipped through, it was the reaction to them. Had the Byzantines crushed the intruders immediately, history might have been different. Instead, fear took root. Soldiers deserted their posts. Rumors drowned out discipline. And the fall of Constantinople began not with a cannon shot or a mighty charge, but with a mistake no army should ever make, forgetting to lock the gate. By the 52nd day of the siege, the walls were cracked, the defenders exhausted, but still holding. And then came the moment that shattered their last hope. Not from an Ottoman cannon, not from a breach, but from within. Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, the mercenary leader of the city's best troops, had been the backbone of Constantinople's defense. His men respected him. Constantine trusted him. And when he fell, so did the city. No one knows the full truth. Some say Giustiniani was badly wounded by cannon fire. Others whisper he panicked, terrified of dying in a foreign land for gold. Whatever the reason, at the moment his men needed him most, he turned his back. He ordered retreat. His troops followed him. And the strongest section of the wall, the sector that had held through weeks of fire, was suddenly abandoned. The Ottomans didn't hesitate. They poured through the gap left undefended, like water rushing through a broken dam. For the Byzantines, it was the nightmare made real. The city they believed was eternal now stood exposed, its heart undefended. Constantine's soldiers looked for their leader, but their leader had already fled. In that chaos, Constantine XI refused to flee. The last emperor of Rome threw off his imperial cloak, drew his sword, and charged into the breach. No crown, no throne, no escape, only steel, blood, and defiance. To his last breath, he fought as a soldier among soldiers, and in those final moments, the emperor's body was swallowed by the clash, never to be found again. Justiniani's retreat was the betrayal that cracked the city more than any cannon. Constantine's death was the symbol that sealed it. The emperor's final words echoed as the walls collapsed. "The city is lost, but I am still emperor." With him fell not just Constantinople, but the last breath of the Roman Empire. When the walls finally collapsed and the Ottomans surged inside, Constantinople's defenders fought to the last. But the city was gone. The Hagia Sophia, once the jewel of Christendom, became a mosque. The Byzantine Empire, which had called itself Rome for 1,000 years, vanished in a single dawn. It was not just the end of a city. It was the end of an age. But history does not end in ruins. Out of Constantinople's ashes, new worlds began to form. Scholars fled west, carried manuscripts the West had forgotten. Greek texts, lost for centuries, sparked a rebirth of knowledge. And so, in the silence after the fall, the Renaissance was born. From one empire's death came the rebirth of another civilization. The fall also sent shockwaves across the seas. With Constantinople in Ottoman hands, the old trade routes to Asia were cut. Desperation forced Europe to look west. And so, ships sailed into unknown waters, one of them carrying Columbus. Without the fall of Constantinople, there may have been no discovery of the New World. The ripple did not stop there. The Ottomans became the new superpower, their empire stretching across continents. For Europe, the loss of Constantinople was a wound, but also a warning. Power shifts fast. Fortresses crumble, and the mistakes of leaders do not stay buried in the past. They echo into the future. In the end, the fall of Constantinople was not just about walls or gates. It was about choices. 3 mistakes: an unlocked door, ignored firepower, and a betrayal ended one of history's greatest empires. But history repeats itself. And the real question is, which of these mistakes are still being made today by governments, companies, and leaders who think their walls will hold forever? Everyone remembers the fall of 1453. The unlocked gate, the cannon, the betrayal. But what almost no one talks about is the mistake made 50 years earlier, a mistake so quiet, so subtle, that it looked harmless at the time. But it planted the seed of doom long before Mehmed ever marched. By the time the Ottomans arrived at the walls, the empire had already been bleeding out for decades. It wasn't an unlocked door. It wasn't an enemy weapon. It was something worse: politics. The Byzantines, desperate for allies, made a deal that chained them to Western powers and alienated their own people. Unity fractured, trust dissolved. When the final siege came, half the empire no longer believed it was worth saving. This was mistake 0. Sacrificing the trust of their own citizens for a fragile alliance. The empire's strength had never been its walls, it was its people. And once the people turned cold, the walls were just stone waiting to crumble. Constantine inherited an empire already divided, already weakened. The fall was written decades before the cannons fired. So when the gate was left open, when the cannon roared, when Justiniani fled, These were not isolated blunders. They were the final nails in a coffin that had been hammered shut years before. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just about mistakes in battle. It was about ignoring the warning signs, pretending the cracks weren't there. And here is the part you were never meant to hear. The Byzantines could have prevented it all. They were warned 50 years earlier. The warning was ignored. The empire paid the price. And the question is, are we ignoring our own warnings today? Because history doesn't just repeat, it stalks. And the same mistake is being made right now. Subscribe, and I'll show you the warning they buried.